All right. All right. So this video is going to go over the for each loop, and then I'm going to go through about 6 sample uh, array list and 2D array type problems from the course description because they give a sample AP multiple choice test in there. It only has 15 questions in it, but we'll go through these because they're good questions to go through. So let's start off with the for each loop. So you guys can go to this site. It's blog.udemy.com for each loop-java. Now there's a bunch of different places where you can learn about the for each loop, but we'll kind of read about it here, and then I've got most people like tables, so I got a good table that kind of shows the well, maybe it's not in there. That's probably better. It shows the reasons you'd use a for loop and the reasons you'd use a for each loop. So let's kind of read through this. So it says now, if you have noticed all the above examples, they are generally used to manipulate integers. What does one do when they have to work with iteration over arrays? To answer this question, in Java 5, the for each loop was introduced for right here, for each loop. This loop can be used very well with iteration over arrays and other such collections. Though you can use a for loop with the iteration operator, the code becomes much more readable with the for each loop when dealing with huge numbers. This loop is preferred to the for loop. Not always, but when the following conditions are seen. So when you're assigning elements, avoid using for each loop when you need to assign a value to an element. So anytime you need a specific index and you need to change the element in that index, do not use a for each loop. Okay, use a normal for loop. Second bullet, use with single structure. You cannot use the loop when you need to compare two. So when you're comparing two arrays in a situation, just use a normal for loop. Forward iterations only. Use the for each loop only for forward looping, and that too in single step. So when you're going from 0 to the end of the array, you can use a for each. But if you're trying to go backwards, don't use a for each. Compatibility, if you need your code to be compatible with version, okay, so don't worry about that. So this gives you kind of the structure of the for each loop, and then a couple examples. Now they didn't indent properly here, but let's say I have this int numericals array. It's got 100, 200, 300, 400, and 500 stored in it. So for int and then u and then colon numerical. So the array is on the right hand side, and before the colon you just have it's a placeholder. It's not the actual element itself, it's just a placeholder. So if we print u and put a comma in, then it will do 100, 200, 300, 400, 500. Next one, we've got titles, which holds William, Beatrice, Lucy, Sam, and then titles is array and name is our placeholder. So we print the placeholder and it prints William, Beatrice, Lucy, Sam. So let's look at this table. So a loop versus a for each. So the for loop is a control structure for specifying iteration that allows code to be repeatedly executed. For each loop is a control structure for traversing items in an array or collection. So it's just, the for each loop is just traversing the entire array. Okay, the for loop is also going through the array, but it's going through it's iterating through each element, through each index position in it. They essentially do the same thing, but the for loop keeps track of what index position you're in. The for each does not. A for loop can be used to retrieve a particular set of elements. The for each loop cannot be used to retrieve a particular set of elements. So if you need to retrieve an index position, don't use the for each loop, okay? But if you're just going through the loop and you need to go from the beginning to the end, it's easier. It's supposed to be more readable. That's the big thing, readability. The for loop is harder to read and write than the for each loop. The for each loop is easier to read and write. So the idea of it is that since you're not having to worry about an index position, you just go from the start to the end. And you don't have to worry about, less than the length or less than or equals to the length or any of that kind of stuff, which we'll see on the practice questions here in a second. And last one, the for loop is used as a general purpose loop. The for each loop is only used with arrays and collections. Okay, so let's go through. So this is the AP course description. Okay, and in this there are, I believe, 15 different questions, and I'm just pulling out all the different ArrayList, and 2D array questions so that you can kind of see, the level of difficulty and what is expected. I obviously give the level of difficulty on our quizzes and tests. A lot of people think the questions that are given on the AP test are actually easier than my questions that I have. Anyway, at the same time, the biggest thing is to see how many questions deal with arrays, array lists, and 2D arrays, because it's a really important topic, and if you miss it, you're going to miss a lot of points on your test. So let's kind of start going through this. So what I did is I copied this and put it in an editor, or in NetBeans, so we can run it and see what's going on. All right, so let's read this. In the following code segment, assume that the string str has been properly declared and initialized. The code segment is intended to print the number of strings in the array animals that have str as a substring. So horse, cow, goat, dog, cat, mouse. So no matter what, if str was equal to one of these, the count would only be 1 because there's only one of each animal. So which of the following changes should be made so that the code segment works as intended? Alright, so I plugged it in and then I printed it. Let's see what happens. Exception. Array index out of bounds. Why would we get that? Well, let's look at the length. Okay, so we have index and index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What's the length? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if I did animals dot length, that would give me 6. So I is less than or equal to the length. So this is the kind of problem where, the AP College Board wants you to use a for each loop because they don't want you to make mistakes like this. So this is 6. Is 0 less than or equal to 6? Yep. All the way up to 6. Is 6 less than or equal to 6? So when I is 6, is there anything in position 6 right here? No. So ideally that will fix it, and we'll get a count of 1. Okay. So on your question, it should be A. The Boolean expression in the for loop header should be changed. No, wait. It's the Boolean expression. Oh yeah, it could be changed to that. I is less than the length. Okay. But, if you did this, if we switched this up a little bit and used our, if we did for, what do we got? String, string, I don't know, X to animals. And if we did the same thing, if X dot index of, let's see if this should work. If it's greater than or equal to 0, okay, that would run through it and that would give us 1. Okay, so this is why the AP board wants us to use the for each loop, because they want to avoid issues, with, in particular, this, figuring out the links. So, that's question 8. Let's do this. Okay, and then we'll just... Okay, question 9. Consider an integer array nums which has been declared initialized with one or more integer values. Which of the following code segments updates nums so that each element contains... So now you're trying to update nums. So remember, if we go back here, the for each loop is a control. Okay, the for each loop cannot be used to retrieve a particular set of elements. It can't be used to set a particular set of elements either. Okay, so if I do, okay, which of the following code segments updates this? Okay, so let's look at the while loop. While loop, you have to have a counter, right? K is less than or equal to the length. K is 0. So then we assign, so this looks fine right here. So you would have element 0, element 0, element 0, and we would take whatever that is and multiply it by each other, and that would square it. But then we get to this next line, and K never gets updated to go to element 1. So you have a infinite loop with 1, so 1 doesn't work. 2 works perfectly. 3 is kind of the maybe it works if you don't know the for each loop. Let's see what this does right here for I'm gonna comment that out for question 11. So let's see if this worked. Does this, because n times n would actually make it double, right? And so we're going to print n, but then we're going to also print each element so you can see that it doesn't change the element. So 1 times 1 is 1, so I've got nums 1, 2, 3, 4. Now in the AP test, you have to create your own data, okay? And so that's all I did here, is I just said, okay, nums is an array, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 in it. So 1 times 1 is 1, but look at this. Element 0 is 1, element 1 is 2, element 2 is 3, element 3 is 4, okay? Did that change nums at all? No. So then n becomes a second. So 2 times 2 is 4, but then these are the same. Then 3 times 3 is 9, 4 times 4 is 16. So again, which of the following code segments updates nums? This doesn't update nums. It just traverses through it and changes the the n placeholder. So your answer can only be A. Number 2 works. 10. 10's best to do just in, a blank notepad. So I'll do that here. So we've got an array list that holds strings, and it's called numbers. So then what do? We say we've got 1, then we add 2. Then we add to position, so this would be, let's kind of index, and then let's do this, we'll say numbers, and that gets set to, so this is index 0 and index 1, and then we add to index 0, 3, so 3. So then it looks like that. And then we set index position 2 to 4. So we set that to 4. And then we add 5. And then we remove what's at position 1. So we get rid of that. Alright, so which of the following represents the number? So what do we got? 3, 4, and 5. 3, 4, and 5. So number 10 is D. Okay. So that should be an easy gimme, but again, you know, I get students that don't write this stuff out, and you know, or they make a simple mistake like they read it too quick and they didn't see that this was set, it was add. I've done that before, and then they add to position 2, 4, and then that screws everything up. So anyway, make sure you go through it one at a time and you're reading it properly. Slow your brain down a little bit. Okay, number 11. We got consider the following method, which is intended to return a list containing the elements of the parameter myList. With all even elements removed. Okay, so 11, let me cut that out of there and paste that there, and I'll cut that right out of there and paste it on 12. Okay, so for 11, you've got your array list again, populate it with information. So I just did 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. Because if you're looking at this code, this is your code. Which of the following best explains why the code does not work properly? So you're going through 0 to the size of your array, and then if mylist.get at position 0 is modulus 2 is equal to 0, meaning it's, you know, it's an even number basically, then we remove it. Okay, so and then we do it for each element. But there's a problem, and this is a classic problem. I can almost guarantee you'll get this, so this should be a gimme. Let's think about this. We go through each one, right? So we go through the first one, we remove that, right? Now 4 gets moved up, so this is index position. So if I did this, this is index position 0, right? But what happens when we remove it, then 4 gets moved up to index position 0, but with I, we add 1 to it. So for the next time around, we go to position 1. Since this is index position 0, this becomes index position 1. So we skip that. We want to remove it because it's an even number, but we skip it. So if we watch what happens, if I print my list, we should skip this one. No, we remove this one. We skip this one. And then we remove this one, and then we skip this one. Okay? So your answer for this is... for, what is this, 11? So your answer is the code segment skips some elements of my list because the indexes of all subsequent elements change by 1 when an element is removed. So again, when you remove it, it gets shifted down to the left to where they were previous at -1, but then your counter gets added up, and so it goes to the next one. So it skips if they're next to each other. Now, this would work if you had something like this. If we had 3, And then 7. The following code segment, and it's got a 2D array where we do the rows. Rows is less than the point. So if you see a 2D array like this, it means the number of rows you have. So row 1, 2, 3, 4. If you see it like this one right here, points at 0, it's the column. It's row 0, but the number of columns. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So length minus 1 is 4. So when we run through this, column is set to 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're making sure that the column's greater than the row. Row is 0. So then it would do what? The row, column, row at 0, column at 4. So that would be what? 14. Anyway, let's look at this real quick. So let's go to 12 and let's cut that. Okay, so if I run this, see what's going on here. We should get, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11. So, let's kind of just go through this again. So row is 0. Row is less than the number of rows. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's going to go through those. Column's going to be row at 0 minus the length. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5. Minus 1 gives us 4. So the length right here is 4. So index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 is greater than or equal to row. So row 0, column 4, row 0, column 3, row 0, column 2, row 0, column 1, row 0, column 0. So that gives us our, right here, 15, 14, 13. So it does it backwards. But then row grows by 1. So column is still 4, but then we want to do 4, 3, 2, 1. So it skips the, so this is your answer for this. So your answer for, that's what it prints. For this, what does it do? What do we got here? D. So 12 is D. And then 13, a little bit different and kind of messed up, kind of weird. Let me cut that out and paste that right there. And I'll remove that. So you've got your array, and then we do right here, does the first row right here, the first row, each one. So then this one does the column for each one. So let's run it real quick just to see what happens. So it adds up all these sums, but if we're in the row, if you see it like this, you're in the row, but then this is the column. So you're doing each row one at a time, and then you've got your columns. So then it's length minus 1, it's less than that. So length minus 1, the length is 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 minus 1 is 3, and 0, 1, 2, 3. But it goes 0, 1, 2. 2 is less than 3. So then that would basically just do this one, and this one for each of them, okay? So anyway, this video is done.